afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum with me, your host, Imperial Dane. We're going to be having a little talk here about Warspoils, but also having a look at one of the commanders so far unlocked. But first about Warspoils, I mean, there's been some rather heavy discussion about it elsewhere, and certainly also some people asking my opinion on it, so I figure, you know, I'll clash these two things together since the Fortifications and the fact I have been making more commander videos, despite there all being several of them, new of them, you know, is because of the Warspoils system. And certainly at the moment, it's a bit of a tricky thing. I mean, essentially, it doesn't feel really rewarding for a lot of people because you generally end up with a lot of, say, junk. I mean, for example, I've got several bulletins here which are the same. Lovely in it. Several of them certainly not useful. I even got several of the same commander skin, for example, here for my 3-color ambush pattern. So, I mean, in that regard, it does feel a bit unrewarding for some people, me included. Which is certainly a bit dull. I mean, that's certainly not the most sort of thing you want the most in the world. But at the same time, there's also another problem, which, well, Relic basically just can't go, you know, making it easy to get everything, because then you'd very quickly get bored of it. Then it'd basically just be, oh, well, I've got every commander now, every new bulletin, and that's about it. I mean, so some way or another, they need to add a bit of fluff. Something so, you know, it's not just jackpot every single bloody time. The problem is basically for a lot of people, they basically get naught every time and they don't hit the jackpot ever, and or at least not in a matter that is very rewarding to them. And basically for Relic, it's about sort of balancing it in some manner that sort of feels, you know, alright for people. I mean, I've been playing this for almost a month now, the game's been out for almost a month, and again, I've got tons of duplicates, and the amount of sort of worthwhile things I've got are even rarer. I mean, I've got Fortifications, and I got Hail of Gunfire, and that's maybe about it. I mean, also got some of this, but for example, Maximum Blitz, I mean, the Yak Panzer was already terrible, so I mean, you know, I'll be making a video on that, by the way, but, you know, this, for example, isn't exactly going to make my day happy. And for example, there's also all the, you know, victory strikes, but so far, I've yet to gain any of them. Of course, I've also gained some faceplates, so there's that as well. But overall, I mean, in that department, it's about Relic sort of striking a balance and also sort of managing maybe just a bit more fluff that, to a certain extent, maybe just feels like something, maybe some kind of additional, say, visual thing to sort of, that doesn't really actually add anything, but maybe something around here, say, an extra thing besides a faceplate, maybe some kind of flourish. I mean, that could be an idea, maybe. Beyond that, there's not really much else to sort of say about this. I mean, it's basically about a balance of making sure it doesn't run out too quickly, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like, you know, you're wading through a sea of trash, duplicate trash even. So to a certain extent, it's basically going to come down to really sort of adding a bit more fluff, which at least feels novel. Maybe some kind of new category. Again, I'd say flourish or something. Maybe some extra little metal stuff here around or something else. I don't know. Or maybe something for the base structures, you can sort of modify them to look a bit more different. Who knows? So just a thought there. And then on to the Commander Fortifications Doctrine. I finally got one. Yay! And I got this one, which is obviously a rather defensive commander from the name already there. You can sort of tell. Yes, this is not going to be a Blitzkrieg commander. 9. I mean, you know, it's to start off with, it sort of follows, you know, Luftwaffe. I mean, it adds an MG-34, it adds heavy fortifications. I mean, MG-34 already there, decent support weapons, suppressors, kills, incendiary piercing rounds, gets Red 25, heavy fortifications, flag emplacements, now cheaper in fuel. You get tank traps and you get trenches. Trenches can be alright in particular versus Americans, which won't necessarily always be running around with Molotovs, for example, so they might have a bit more worth there. But then you get sort of to the newer parts, you get field defenses, which allows your Volksgunners to build minefields. More specifically, they allow to put down S-mines, handy that, and also allow to set bunkers, which can be upgraded only with the MG though. No medics, no command bunkers, at least not unless they change that all of a sudden. I'm a bit disappointed in that. I would have loved medic bunkers and command bunkers. Well, I think that would have made field defenses a lot more worth it, because already, I mean, you're putting more 60 down munitions, which is worth a lot more for the Oberkommando than it is for the Wehrmacht. But still, it allows your Volksgunner to do something with that. Of course, that rather depends on Volksgunners being sort of, to a certain extent, present on the battlefield. So, you know, for some players it might not have so much worth, or at least if you already have one, you mean you can still lay down S-mines and say a bunker here and there, which can still be handy if you're, for example, saving up fuel for something important. Then you might say, well, I won't get a flag emplacement, instead I'll get a bunker up and sort of hold back either the Amerikaner or the Schweinhund Russen. So that's something there to consider. And then the Pack 43 emplacement allows your stone pioneers to sort of put down a Pack 43. We already know that from the Wehrmacht. Shoots through terrain, really nasty, can take out most vehicles in a few shots. They have been nerfed, those it doesn't quite have the same range as it used to. But of course, as the Oberkommando West, it has 5 levels of veterancy, which means a level 5 or veterancy 5 Pack 43 is going to be an absolute nightmare for your opponent's armor. It's going to be sort of like one shot, and you know, the tank crews will need therapy if they don't just die on the spot. I mean, that's something they of course consider, but of course it's also handy for the Oberkommando West, maybe more for the Wehrmacht, because again, for the Oberkommando West you'll be a lot more fuel starved, and also it'll have a much better range than the Rakettenwerfer, so to a certain extent it can be sort of more supportive towards, you know, some of the later gameplay, for example. I mean, this commander you might be able to sort of allow yourself to go a bit more for, say, a Panther or a King Tiger for that matter. So a little thing there to keep in mind while playing. And then we have the sort of, you know, the grand daddy ability there, Searing Artillery, and it sort of sounds, you know, when you look at it, automatically attacks visible enemy units in the target area, artillery rate 5 ramps up. It sort of sounds like, you know, Scorched Earth, or, well, not Scorched Earth, but basically, you know, Sector Artillery. But it's a bit different. It's very much target artillery, just like any regular barrage, but the difference is, you know, it basically targets any units that can be seen in the area, and it rates up, so you can actually use this ability offensively. So say your opponent has sort of dug down heavy on an area, machine guns, mortars, anti-tank guns, infantry, trenches, or whatever, you name it. You pop that one in, and he's either going to have to retreat, or he's going to be suffering a very huge loss. And that's about it. There's no middle ground there. Either you move, or you die horribly. It also costs 300 munitions, so basically it costs more than a barrage from the Schwerer Gustav. In that regard, it's probably the most expensive ability, in particular, also considering, again, it's Oberkommando West. So it's not something you'll be going for very often, but again, when you do it, it's going to hurt. And certainly your opponent will be caught very much off guard, though it's going to be a tricky sort of building up for it. It's definitely going to require a mechanized regiment and trading off fuel. So you definitely want to get your tanks before getting that one. But overall, I mean, a nice defensive command, it sort of adds a bit of this and that. It might not, of course, be for everyone, but I mean, with the Pack 43, MG34s, the minefields and such, I can actually see it having some worth there. It can actually be quite helpful and I think handy for some players. I mean, to a certain extent, you know, if you feel like, oh, right, I've done well, but I'm a bit worried about it can actually hold it in this, then Fortifications option might be worth it for you. Or if you're suddenly realizing, you know, I'm a bit worried about heavy armor from my opponent, I might want to get a Pack 43 because do that. So overall, might not, for example, be, you know, this most impressive commander ever in the existence of commanders, but it's definitely not bad either. I think overall it's a pretty solid commander that can be well recommended for anyone needing something sort of for a more defensive backbone. So this is Imperial Dane saying cheers, and thank you all for watching.